As Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "In individuals, insanity is rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule." That sentence quietly gets at something most people avoid admitting. The line between a religion and a cult is thinner than we like to believe. Most of us grow up hearing about cults as strange fringe groups led by charismatic leaders, isolated from society, often ending in tragedy. We hear about Jonestown, Heaven's Gate, or the Branch Davidians and think, that's not my religion, that's something extreme. But if we step back and examine the psychological mechanisms that sustain cults, we begin to notice that many of these same tools are embedded, sometimes subtly, within mainstream religions. One of the most powerful features of cult psychology is thought reform. It's not always forced or overt. In fact, it's often most effective when it feels voluntary. This is where religious indoctrination excels. From a very young age, many children are taught that certain beliefs are unquestionable truths. They aren't presented as one possible worldview among many. They're presented as fact. The earlier these ideas take root, the less likely the individual is to ever challenge them, because these beliefs get tied to their sense of identity. Robert Lifton, who studied thought reform extensively, outlined several features that characterize environments where thought control thrives. These include milieu control, mystical manipulation, demand for purity, confession, sacred science, loading the language, doctrine over person, and dispensing of existence. If we strip away the context of cults and apply these to large, socially accepted religions, we see uncomfortable parallels. Take milieu control, for example. In many religious communities, there is an invisible boundary around what information is acceptable. Questioning the teachings, reading alternative perspectives, or engaging with critics is often discouraged or even forbidden. The control isn't necessarily physical, it's psychological. The fear of ostracism, sin, or eternal punishment makes many believers self-censor. They become their own gatekeepers. Mystical manipulation works by convincing people that certain events, coincidences, or emotional experiences are evidence of divine intervention. A person prays, and then coincidentally something good happens. The brain quickly links the two. This creates a reinforcement loop. The person feels chosen, special, or protected, which deepens their loyalty to the system that promised them that connection in the first place. Demand for purity sets up impossible standards. Followers are told to strive for moral or spiritual perfection, even though it's unattainable. This ensures a constant cycle of guilt and redemption, keeping the individual psychologically tethered. In many mainstream religions, this is embedded through the concepts of sin, confession, penance, or repentance. Sacred science creates the illusion that the belief system has a monopoly on truth. It's not just a matter of faith, it's presented as absolute knowledge. Any contradictory evidence or scientific understanding is dismissed or reinterpreted to fit the narrative. This discourages critical thinking, because to question the doctrine is framed as arrogance or spiritual danger. Loading the language involves using specialized vocabulary that reshapes how followers think. Words like blessed, saved, righteous, or evil carry weight far beyond their dictionary definitions. They trigger emotional responses and signal in-group belonging. The more a person speaks this coded language, the more their world narrows to the framework provided by the religion. Doctrine over person elevates the system's rules above individual experience or reason. If someone struggles with a teaching that feels unjust or harmful, they are told that the problem lies within them, not the doctrine. This creates cognitive dissonance, which the person often resolves by suppressing doubt rather than questioning the belief system. Finally, dispensing of existence draws a stark line between those who are inside the belief system and those who are outside. Outsiders are seen as lost, sinful, or even evil. This us versus them mindset fosters dependency on the group. Believers are subtly trained to fear what lies beyond the group's boundaries, making leaving psychologically terrifying. Of course, not every religious person experiences all of these dynamics with the same intensity. Mainstream religions often wrap these mechanisms in tradition, culture, and community in ways that feel comforting rather than coercive. But the psychological structures are still there. One of the more insidious aspects is how these systems harness our natural social instincts. Humans crave belonging. We seek out communities where we feel understood and valued. Religion offers that, but often with conditions attached. Acceptance may be conditional on maintaining the right beliefs, adhering to certain behaviors, or rejecting people who think differently. This creates a kind of emotional blackmail. Stay loyal to the group or risk losing your support system. Social proof plays a massive role here. When everyone around you believes the same thing, it becomes harder to entertain doubts. The brain is wired to take consensus as a sign of truth. The more isolated a religious community is, the stronger this effect becomes. This is why religious enclaves or tightly knit congregations often have a more rigid grip on their members. Another psychological lever is authority. Many religions position their leaders as mouthpieces for the divine. This creates an unquestionable hierarchy where obedience is framed as virtuous. The leader's interpretations carry weight not because they make sense logically, but because they are seen as spiritually sanctioned. Over time, followers surrender more and more of their critical faculties, deferring to authority figures who claim to speak for something higher than mere human reasoning. Fear is also a fundamental tool. The fear of eternal punishment, divine judgment, or spiritual failure can be a more effective motivator than any earthly threat. This creates a powerful internal control system. People police their own thoughts and actions not because someone is watching, but because they've internalized the idea that an all-seeing being is always observing them. Even rituals play a part in solidifying group identity. Repetitive ceremonies, shared prayers, or symbolic acts reinforce the group's narratives and create emotional anchors. These shared experiences make the belief system feel deeply real, even when detached from objective evidence. Over time, these rituals become part of a person's sense of self, making the thought of leaving feel like erasing one's identity. Economic dependence can also come into play. In some religious communities, the lines between faith, livelihood, and social status blur. Your job, your family connections, your social standing might all be entangled with your participation in the religion. Leaving the belief system could mean losing your entire support network, making dissent not just emotionally painful, but financially dangerous. What's particularly striking is how often these systems manage to present themselves as voluntary while employing psychological pressures that are anything but free. The person feels like they're making their own choices, but those choices have been heavily shaped by years of conditioning, selective information, emotional manipulation, and social consequences. At the heart of all this is control. Control over thought, behavior, and ultimately, identity. And when you control identity, you control people. This is the same psychology that operates in cults, just often with different branding. What makes this difficult to talk about is the emotional comfort many people derive from their religious communities. The friendships, the family bonds, the sense of purpose can feel profoundly meaningful. That emotional fulfillment often makes it harder to step back and critically assess the underlying mechanisms. People don't want to believe that something so central to their lives might share uncomfortable similarities with systems they otherwise recognize as dangerous. To be clear, not all religious individuals are trapped in cult-like dynamics. Some approach their beliefs with a healthy degree of skepticism, openness, and personal autonomy. But the structural features remain in place, ready to exploit human vulnerabilities where conditions allow. In the end, The psychology that makes cults work is not exotic or rare. It's deeply human. It taps into our needs for certainty, belonging, purpose, and security. When a system offers answers to life's biggest questions, provides a tight-knit community, and frames doubt as dangerous, it becomes very hard to walk away. Nietzsche's observation holds. When we gather into groups with shared ideologies, even those we call sacred, we become vulnerable to the very irrationalities we think we've transcended. The real danger is not in the existence of belief, but in the surrender of critical thought to systems that claim to have all the answers.